happy Sunday, if it is Sunday where you are. I hope everybody has had a good weekend. Gavin and I have had a very slow weekend, which is fine. I didn't want to do anything this weekend, so we slept in, snuggled, and have just been hanging out today. One of the reasons that I wanted to do a live today is I wanted to talk about fear as it relates to being single and childless, not by choice. This was something that somebody reached out and wanted to talk a little bit more about. I am going to do more of a long form video around this topic because I think it's a really relevant topic for many of us. I think even if you're in more of an acceptance phase of being single and childless, not by choice, probably more stage than phase, but even if you're feeling more acceptance around it, I think fear is one of those things that it still pops in every so often. And there's fear about a lot of different things. I do think whether you're single or childless, sometimes we experience fear about the future just because it can be unknown. I think when you're single and childless, not by choice, though, it's even more unknown. I think one of the reasons it feels very unknown is that there's not a lot of representation about what it looks like to live your life as someone who is single and childless, not by choice, and not in the middle of actively pursuing changing those things. When we look at family, when we see movies, when we see old age, oftentimes it shows people who are partnered, or it's a big family, or they have kids, people are grandparents, things like that. And when that's not going to be your future in terms of having kids and being a grandparent, it can be scary to think about, well, what is it going to look like? Because there's nothing for you to kind of hold on to or latch onto. That's a little bit how it feels for me. And I would say kind of the biggest fear that I have, and I hear this a lot, is kind of what's it going to look like when you're older, right? The fears around what if I die alone, the fears around what if I end up in a nursing home and there's nobody there but the staff, which is okay, depending on where you're at. I also think sometimes it feels like having kids means we won't have to worry about those things. And that's not the case. I think there's lots of people who are older that kids don't show up in that way. Uh, and I think if I'm going to like take a spin on it, I think if you are childless, you can at least plan ahead for that, and you won't have an expectation that there will be somebody there if in fact they don't turn out to be. So one of the things that I'm doing in order to help kind of mitigate against that is trying to save up some money on the side so I can stay in my home and live independently as long as possible. And also trying to take care of my body through exercise and strength training in order to be able to be mobile and live independently as long as possible. I think that other fears that come up is kind of being alone, right? Not having anybody to enjoy life with or go do things with. The fear around what it means. Maybe fear around what other people are thinking or how other people are perceiving your life. Other fears that I think that I sometimes feel is like financial fears. Really wanting to make sure that even though I'm on a single income, that I have money for retirement, for example, or that I have enough money in order to enjoy my life, but not have to grind and hustle and grind in order to feel like I have enough financially to live a life that I want. I think being or feeling lonely is another fear that a lot of people have. One of the things that I think about in terms of this topic is, I can't exactly remember the stat, but I think there's something like 40% of women will be single and not have kids by like 2030. That might not be the exact data point, but it's close or something similar to that. And one of the things that I think that means is, I think that aging or retirement, things like that, will look different than what we can imagine right now. So I think communal living will be more of a thing than it is now. I think people maybe getting housing together, maybe there's even communities around that are more based on like living versus maybe being sick and being in a place, or having a certain symptom and being in a place. So I'm optimistic for that. What are the other things that I think about too is, what if something happens? What if I get sick and incapacitated? So I think those are some of the fears that come up. And I really do try and remind myself that I think these are fears that anybody can have. And these are fears that I think thinking and planning ahead a little bit around that is probably really wise, but you don't want to get stuck in the fear, right? You absolutely want to live your life now. And maybe maybe for every fear that you think of, maybe you try and think about an opposite thing. Fears around, I think, what other people are thinking, or fears around what that means, or what like society will think about you, or even just judgment. I think those are things that come up more on the daily. Sometimes, like when somebody asks me if I have kids and I say no, I do sometimes wonder, like, what are they thinking, or what questions are they kind of wanting to follow that up with. And I try my best to just not get into that, and really try my best, even in other things, try not to like read somebody else's mind. I absolutely try not to do that. I think finding community can also be really helpful around that. But fear is a part of living a lifestyle that looks different. I think fear is a part of living against the mainstream. I don't think it's something that many of us sort of set out to do, is to live this lifestyle that's against the mainstream. But that's where we are. This is where we find ourselves. And that can be scary. There's a lot of fear around that because it's unknown and it's unpredictable. I do sometimes think, going back to what I was talking about a little bit, I do think that sometimes the safety or security that people do feel, maybe in relationship or in terms of having children, and what that'll mean for the future, I do think that sometimes that's an illusion. Divorce rates are very high, 50% in the United States, maybe even a little more than that. Again, the idea that having kids is a certainty that you will have somebody there when you're older that'll want to be around you, that'll be communicating with you, that'll contact you, that will help you. Those things are things that we're told and do happen for some people, but there are a lot of people that is not the case for whatever reason, whether it be because somebody else has passed away first, people have passed away because you live a long distance from somebody. Again, I think one of the benefits that we who don't have kids, one of the things that we can do is kind of plan ahead without an expectation that might not pan out. And so that's one of the things that I try and do when I think about the fear. I mean, I've had like full blown like therapy sessions with my therapist about what's going to happen if I'm by myself and I need to go into a nursing home or something. I mean, I will like, the outside world will then like cease to exist for me. I am the youngest by quite a bit in terms of siblings in my family, and I certainly would not want to be kind of a burden on nieces and nephews. Thinking about this single childless aunt that they have. I mean, it's like so cliche. And so I have literally spent money, right, to process this with my therapist. And again, I think about it in terms of trying to control the controllables and trying not to predict the future. Because, listen, I never would have predicted that this happened. And that's where I am today. And so I don't know the future. I don't know what that'll look like. And controlling the controllables, trying to put myself in a good financial position, trying to kind of have a plan that my goal is going to be to take care of my body, to take care of myself, so I can try and stay in my home and remain independent for as long as possible. Consider alternative living situations. Again, I think community living is something that is being talked about more. I think it happens in other countries a little bit more. I think in the way it happens in the United States a little bit is it's like elderly people are kind of segregated off to the side, and then you can, like, they're just like in that spot where nobody else is around. I would love to be more in a scenario in which I'm in a beautiful setting where I can get around easily to other places, that there's a wide range of ages there. Because I do think surrounding yourself with a lot of different people is helpful versus, kind of segregating people away. So again, controlling the controllables and thinking about the things that I can manage right now, because I can't do anything about the uncertainty, because ultimately all of it's uncertain and nothing is kind of a sure thing. Also, a lot of self-talk is what I try and do. Again, I have a therapist that I process these things out with because talking about it helps. I think getting it out helps. And just reminding myself to control the controllables. I don't know what the future is. If we think about, and this is one of the things that I try and remind myself when, people say, well, you don't know what the future holds, because for a long time that I just found that annoying, particularly when I started to verbalize a little worry around not having kids. Well, you never know what the future is. And I found it really minimizing and unhelpful. And now what I'm trying to remind myself as an example is, think how many like jobs there are that 20 years ago you wouldn't even known would exist, that you wouldn't even think about, like specializing in AI, for example, because who could have really thought that far ahead? Some people were, but not along the mainstream. Computer coding is like an example of that they're constantly evolving and coming up with new, more ways. And so I try and kind of think about it in terms of what aging will look like. Who knows what it will be? Who knows what housing options will be? Who knows what community options will be? So things to consider when you're thinking about fear and getting stuck in that place. I think if you are feeling overwhelmed with fear in the moment, really try and center your thoughts back into the moment, right? Fear, I often will feel more fear when my thoughts go too far into the future. And if you start to notice your thoughts going there, bring them back to the present. You're gonna be like, yeah, easier said than done. Yeah, it is. And some of the things that can help people do that is really focusing on more of the sensory things. So if you are finding that your thoughts are just on a runaway train, speeding down the rail, I want you to then pay attention to, what do you see in the space that you're in? What do you hear in the space that you're in? What do you feel? What do you smell? There's a fifth sense that I can't remember. Whatever the fifth sense is. Those are sometimes things that can help bring your thoughts back into the moment, because the senses can sometimes kind of jerk the tail of our thoughts and bring them back to the present. One of the things that I do, if this is happening a lot while I'm trying to fall asleep at night, which is mostly when this happens for me, if it happens for me now, is I will try and either put on a podcast and I'll try and focus on that. Sometimes that keeps me awake. And so if I'm worried that that'll happen, I will put on sounds of the rain or sounds of the waves. And it's like enough stimulus to where my brain will latch onto it, but it doesn't keep me awake. I find it more soothing. Getting up and changing your environment, if this is happening during the day, can be helpful. Sometimes even journaling in the moment can be helpful, and recognizing that there's probably not going to be just like one thing that you do that then stops the fear. It's about kind of managing the fear ongoing and knowing that it's going to come, and then having a few things that you can do when it does come. And the goal being that if it's spiking way up here, right now, that in the future, it might just not go as high, and it might have a little bit more rounded of an edge. And knowing that this is going to come, I have a plan for it, I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to control the controllables. That's what I try and remind myself, along with, it is true, just because somebody has kids does not mean that they have, old age set, which is sad and for a whole other reason, quite frankly. So let me know in the comments some things and thoughts that you have around fear. Again, this is something that I am going to do more of a longer video on, but I'm still like working through my thoughts on it a little bit, and thought maybe doing a live and talking out loud a little bit would be helpful, and even getting some feedback in terms of fear. It's also okay to admit that you have fear. You can, be in acceptance, or you can be in grief, or you can feel okay with where you're at now and still have fear. Fear is a healthy, like even evolutionarily, it's a healthy feeling to have. It's an uncomfortable feeling to have. It sucks, but it's okay to have. And maybe if we think about some of the more uncomfortable feelings, not so much as trying to eliminate them, because they do serve a certain purpose. For example, for me, I am like going to try and take steps to minimize the things I'm afraid about in old age. So it is getting me to take action, for example. So there is some benefit to it. And so maybe the way we conceptualize it is not trying to eliminate it, but trying to manage it, trying to round the edges out of it, right? So instead of it spiking really high with like this really pointy edge, we just kind of want to create a little waves around it, and then pull the levers that we know. Again, I say this a lot, but if you are finding yourself having some really intense feelings or getting stuck in some feelings, as cliche as this sound, these are the three things that I would always encourage people to think about first. That is sleep. How is your sleep? If it's off, get back onto sleep, and you can do some sleep hygiene things, or talk to your doctor if you're really struggling with sleep. Nutrition, eating enough, not binging, eating healthy foods, trying to stay away from a ton of like caffeine, things like that. And then, of course, body movement. Walking, if you're not somebody that likes to do like intense cardio or strength training or things like that. But those are the three things that are kind of the foundation. And then these other things that we're talking about, we kind of build up from there. Sleep, nutrition, and body movement. Physical health and mental health kind of start with those three things. So if you feel like you don't have the one of those things or two of those things or three of those things going for you right now, start there, and then seek out community and remind yourself of some of the self-talk stuff that we talked about. I think that's kind of the my basic kind of feelings around fear. And again, I think this will be more of an ongoing conversation within the community because it's normal, you know. Yeah, I think it's normal when there's something that's unknown. And like I said, not only is it unknown, but there's nothing that we can like pull from to see in the future, like what that'll be. So I hope everybody has a good rest of your Sunday and that you're enjoying yourself. If it's Sunday where you are, I always forget that it's like, what is today? It's Monday morning in certain parts of the world. So hope you're enjoying spring, if it's also spring where you are. And subscribe to Sonder Sisterhood, which is a channel for people who are single and childless, not by choice. And let me know in the comments your thoughts about fear, if there's anything you'd like me to expand on when I do the more long form content video. And I will see you guys all soon. For the regulars on the channel, I'll give you a little sneak peek at Gavin. He is very tired today. Yeah. Okay. I'll see you in the next video. How do I end?